MMA Rants and Raves, UFC 120, Mike Pyle versus John Hathaway. Guys, let's talk about this fight. Two really big welterweights. You got Hathaway at 6'1", long reach, and then you also have Mike Pyle at 6'1" with a long reach as well. So this was a battle of two big welterweights. Beginning of the fight, see these guys standing up with each other, just 4 or 5. Pyle goes for a takedown, shoots for one, and gets it down decisively. And I'm like, wow, you know something? Hathaway is known for his really good takedown defense, and he's been stuffing takedowns from guys that are really good wrestlers, and he just gets this takedown decisively. So, of course, maybe he was in a bad position, wasn't ready for it, but it just seemed that the beginning of the fight, that was setting the tone for what was going to happen later on. And when he got that takedown, you know, I was hearing in the corner later in the fight, I heard the Natural's voice. I mean, the Natural was screaming in the corner. I'm like, he's going for takedowns in wrestling, and he's got the Natural screaming in his corner. If this guy's training with the Natural, that means he knows wrestling. If you're training with him, he's definitely teaching you wrestling. There's no question about that. So he got that takedown, and then, of course, it went to the cage. You saw Hathaway, also very strong, big, strong guy. He was able to kind of use the cage to get back and kind of reverse it. So it looked like he was doing okay. And then later on, you know, about under 2 minutes, you see Pyle hitting really good precision shots on Hathaway. I mean, his striking was really good, very precision. It just seemed that those long punches, he was either getting some of them or all of them. I mean, his striking was looking really good. And Pyle was also shown to be a really quick guy. You know, for a guy that big, he was really moving his feet very well, very quick, and doing really well. And he was just basically outstriking Hathaway in that fight. And then, of course, he basically caps the first round, which was a victory for him, with a takedown towards the end, gets Hathaway down to seal that first round, and he definitely won that first round. Then in the second round, you see Hathaway coming out more aggressive, landing some shots, looking good, and at 2:30 they grapple, and then it just seems that they're really tight in the grapple. You really didn't know who had the advantage, but then all of a sudden it seemed like Pyle got this judo throw. And let me tell you something, this Pyle's a strong guy. You know, he handles himself very well with the grappling. He just looks very technical, very versed, experienced with grappling, and it just seemed like he just dumped Hathaway down and got him down. And then towards the end of the second round, this was really interesting to see. I mean, he had Hathaway in this top-mounted triangle, and it was really interesting. I just have never seen anything similar to this. I mean, he got his leg under the back of Hathaway, and then he got the other leg over, and he was like on top of him, laying on top. And he had him in a side mount with the triangle, and at the same time, he had his arm free to strike Hathaway, and also one of Hathaway's arms, which were trapped in that triangle. So, you know, this was an amazing position to have, especially with over 2 minutes left in the round. I mean, he basically had him stuck there, you know, like a dead duck. I mean, he basically could have just kept on hitting him. So he basically had his head right where he wanted it. Hathaway was completely immobile. I mean, it was worse to have a guy even locked up with handcuffs and leg irons, because there was just nothing that he could do. He couldn't even move his head. So from that position, he was just able to throw strikes, and it seemed he was trying to graze elbows at him, which can be really nasty. We know what elbows can do. And he was just hitting him, and those strikes were really, really nasty, because you could just see that they were having a lot of effect. You saw Hathaway's forehead was really getting bruised up after all those punches. And, I mean, I'm telling you, not many guys come as tough as Hathaway. That's a tough kid. I mean, he was taking a lot of strikes in the first round. Some of them looked like knockout power type of strikes. He was able to absorb them, keep on fighting, and to basically get out of that position to survive. Nobody could have gotten out of that. It would be impossible. I mean, he was just completely tied up. There was no movement. You know, you have no movement in the back. And what's interesting about that position that Pyle had was that a typical triangle choke, you know, there's a way to get out of it, you know, by actually popping your head out if the guy doesn't have it in all the way. But when you have a guy on top of you, when you have the legs wrapped up around your neck, you know, there's no movement on your back. There's really no way to slide out of that. You're just completely tied up like a nut. and you just have this guy with his hand free on top, just basically slamming at you with punches and elbows. I mean, it's just a nasty position to be in. Then, of course, the risk of getting choked out, that's the other risk, and he was able to pull through that. Tough kid, Hathaway, able to get out of that. So, of course, you got to give the second round to Pyle. Then moving on to third, you just see Hathaway, of course, it was desperation. He knew that he was down 2 rounds. It's a very well-experienced, well-versed, well-rounded Mike Pyle. So he comes out aggressive, tries to get a takedown. Pyle, very quick, runs away from it. So Hathaway, smart. He was changing his game plan. He said, look, I can't strike with this guy. He's a very good striker. He's outstriking me. And, of course, I'm the one doing takedown defense. Let me be the guy who's the aggressor. Let me get the takedowns. But it just didn't seem to work. When they did grapple, it just seemed that Pyle had the advantage. And, basically, when Hathaway survives the takedown, it just seemed that Pyle was the one to grapple, and he got the takedown instead. And at about 2:55, he basically got the takedown, and Hathaway was able to control him. I mean, for the rest of that round, there was nothing Hathaway can do on his back. He just couldn't get back up on his feet. And guys, I was just blown away with Mike Pyle. I mean, I've watched this guy throughout his career. He's always been a very good mixed martial artist, like I said. He's a pound-for-pound type of guy. I mean, he can move up different weight classes and be successful. I mean, although with Quinton Jackson, he was outweighed by 30 pounds, like I said, and he fought a great fight. The fight went to a decision. I mean, he's a really good, tough fighter. But I've never seen him this dominant with wrestling. I mean, Hathaway is just a really tough guy. We've seen against Diego Sanchez. I mean, he dominated Diego Sanchez. This guy's story, he was very tough against him. As a welterweight, he's just such a tough guy to take down. And you saw Mike Pyle taking him down time after time. He was basically outstriking him on his feet, and he was using great submission techniques on the ground. The one on the second round was just beautiful. I mean, I've never seen anything like that type of position. I mean, it just seemed to lock it in. And this fight was basically experience, versus hype. And experience won at the end of the day. Of course, Hathaway has a lot going behind the hype. I think this guy's going to have a good career ahead of him, but he's obviously young and he's got to learn a lot. And that's the thing. That's why they show age at the beginning of the fight. I mean, that was really the factor. This guy is very well experienced, very well rounded. Guy's blown away with Mike Pyle. Very impressive performance. And to me, this was the fight of the night. And it was a great card overall, but, this fight was definitely the fight of the night. Really good fight. I'd like to know what you thought about it. Please leave your comments below the video, rate this video, and subscribe. And thank you for tuning in.